the most interesting paper I saw at this conference, which I thought was really, really cool, and I even put their website on here so I can show you afterwards. It was the paper was about playable quotes. So he gave the example, like, if you're trying to quote like a book, right? It's like really easy to do it. You take like that piece of text and you quote it. And then if you want to quote like a movie, you can show like the scene of the movie, right? So how would you quote a video game? So then he gave like examples of how you normally do it now. It would be similar to like a movie. You'd probably have like a little video of it playing, right? Mm-hmm. So then this was when my mind was like, holy shit. He showed this, like this website, and their whole idea of playable quotes is it's like that, but then you can click and then you can take control. And then you can play that little section that the quote is about. So it's basically like you can see this little snippet that they're trying to quote, right? Like maybe they're talking about this one scene in the game where you have to make this difficult jump. And then you can actually take control and then play it yourself. But only that little piece of the game. And I thought that was so cool because he was showing it. He was like, and then there's this Pokemon example. And it's like, they're walking up. But then if I click this button, now I'm controlling it. And then he was like, you can only go in this place. So it's not like the whole game. It's only that. It's actually like a playable quote. You're playing a playable quote of the game. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was so fucking cool. Because that's like, is that not like the coolest thing ever?
Really cool.
So he talked about how they're working on doing this, right? And it's basically, they were focused, it's basically you mask out the ROM of the game, like the read-only memory parts of the game that are only relevant to that part of the game. So I think what they did was like they played that section of the game and then they looked at the disk accesses, like what parts of the ROM are actually being used when you're playing this part of the game. And then from that they create like a mask. So it's like you only need these parts of the ROM for this part of the game, which means all the other parts are inaccessible, which then means that like should solve the issue of like piracy in a way where you're like playing the game even though you didn't buy it. So it's like you can only actually play that part because if you go somewhere else, it's like not part of whatever is packaged in the quote because it only contains whatever they masked out. And I'm kind of butchering their technical explanation, but it like made sense to me because like all this stuff was like stuff I kind of learned about and could like follow along. And I was like, that's fucking cool. That's like the coolest concept really,
and you can do it for any game.
Yeah, and apparently he said like this should be scalable in the sense that you could do this. They only did it with like the simple games right now, like
generalizable, not scalable.
Yeah, generalizable to like even modern day games.
Insane.
Which they haven't tried yet, but they said in theory it should be.
That would I thought it would be like a framework that game developers could add.
No,
that is so cool.
That's so cool. I'll show you I guess I'll link the website that they have, where they have this whole paper that they're talking about it. But I was like, that's fucking crazy. Wow. That's really, really cool. And I was like in awe. That was like my favorite paper by far because I was like, this is actually why I'd want to go to game conferences to learn about things like this because this is so cool. Yeah, and they on their website, I think they have a bunch of playable quotes where you can do this with like certain games. So they only did it with like the basic ones, but in their presentation, someone asked, could you do this with multiplayer? And they said like, it wouldn't really work as well because there's like more of a network thing, and like that would be harder. But in terms of single player, they were like, should in theory be generalizable to like anything.
Wow.
So fucking cool. That's really cool.
Civ 5.
Yeah. And they were saying like the four things they were going for with playable quotes was playability, partitioning, permanent, and performative. So what it means is playability means that playability part of the quote. It's not just like a video.
Were you taking notes during the presentation?
Only for this one because I wrote it down just for on the topic list because I knew it would be really cool and I wanted to bring it up. Okay. So it was like partition meant like you can only play that part of the playable quote or the game. And then permanent, I think part of the motivation they wanted to do this was a lot of games now are like, they're going digital only, and then it's at the whim of the stores. Like they can just take the game off, and then now you'll never have access to it. I mean, unless you pirate it or something. But maybe there's not even a pirated copy. So it's like this is part of a way to have permanent memories and like records of like certain games and like certain moments in games too. And then the last part was performative. So the whole part where I said it was like a video and then you could take control, right? It's not actually a video. It's like the game itself, but it also records like the inputs. So it's like that specific inputs that was going to the game, so then it like replays that in the game. And then since it's not like a video, you're not actually like changing from like a video to the game. It's like the game and it's putting in inputs, and then now you're just taking control and doing your own inputs instead. So
Wow.
that was like their motivation. Really
Wow.
cool. I don't know if the audience will think it's as cool as we do, but I think that was really cool.
Wait, but how? But then, okay, so that's how they do the memory. But what about like the executable? Like, how do you know where you are? The
So
binary.
I can't explain that, but they did talk about that, and it's in the paper, and it all made sense
Okay.
in the thing. So I'll show it to you afterwards, and probably the answers will be answered there. So yeah, I think that was the highlight for me, by far.
Uh-huh.
Coolest paper, something I actually learned, something that I actually looked up afterwards. I was like,
Is that
I
what
want
you
to
put
learn more.
For the thing that you learned about?
Oh, I didn't even put that because it wasn't really related with our project. But yeah, if it was something, what is like the coolest thing you learned at this conference, academic wise, for sure. That was like the coolest thing that I heard.